Ever noticed a hidden cycle at work? It's something that happens all the time, but no one really talks about it. And it could be happening to you right now. The people who always say yes, who jump into action first, the ones who always respond with no problem, no matter what. But here's the question. What happens when their yes becomes an endless cycle? They start out praised as reliable, they gradually become the default go-to, and they often end up as the system's most exhausted, yet silent, unlimited liability nodes. This isn't about just learning to say no. We're going much deeper. We'll uncover how every yes you say alters your value, erodes your boundaries, and ultimately changes your future. You'll be shocked by what happens behind the scenes. All right, pause. Recall this. After you or someone you've watched repeatedly said okay to extra work, to fuzzy responsibilities, to things outside your core role, what usually happened next? A, they gain more trust, better opportunities, a virtuous cycle. B, those requests just became more frequent, more expected. C, a feeling of exhaustion, a vague sense of unfairness, but no clear way to stop it. Type what you've seen in the comments. By the end of this, we'll reveal how the system turns compliance into a structural cage. Let's open up the logic, piece by piece. But before we dive in, there's one crucial piece of this puzzle you need to understand first. If you don't get this, the rest won't make sense. First, the boundary erosion algorithm. Here's how your yes gets read as infinitely available. But hold on, this isn't the whole story. There's a hidden trap you won't see coming. Meet Thomas, project manager at a design firm in Stockholm, known for solving problems, for never letting the team down. Ambiguous client needs, last-minute tasks, a colleague's panic request. Thomas's answer is always, leave it to me. No problem. At first, it brought high praise, but soon Thomas's calendar was a swamp of unplanned, value high urgency tasks. In the system's task allocation logic, he'd been tagged high efficiency node, extremely low refusal threshold, low delay risk. Ambiguous responsibilities started flowing to him automatically. Not because he was the best person, but because the system, through historical data, had learned he was the path of least resistance. If you've noticed that ad hoc tasks find you more and more naturally, type path below. Second, from volunteer to default setting. The invisible institutionalization of your effort. When your yes becomes a predictable pattern, your role changes. Qualitatively, you shift from being a selectable resource to becoming a built-in default component of the operating procedure. Systems chase efficiency, certainty. A you who always says yes gives the system perfect certainty. Any overflow, any gray area duty has a known, reliable landing point. It's like installing a fixed spillway in a chaotic river. So the system stops designing better processes or clearer roles for these gray areas. Why would it? It just needs to keep calling you. In New York's ad world, a senior copywriter who's always willing to revise campaigns over the weekend doesn't become the first person they think of for urgent revisions. He becomes the only person whose availability is never questioned. His willingness has quietly morphed into a procedural assumption. Third, the compound interest of refusal cost. Why it gets harder and harder to ever say no. This is the most insidious cost. The cost of refusal grows exponentially. Every yes you give secretly increases the price of your next no. But there's a catch. The more you say yes, the harder it is to break free. We'll show you why. At the start, a no might just need a simple explanation. But once you've set a baseline of always agreeing, your first refusal isn't a neutral adjustment. It's read as a major deviation, an anomaly signal. Colleagues, bosses, they feel confusion, maybe even displeasure. You were always able to before. What's different this time? You're no longer just weighing one request. You're challenging the perceived consistency of your entire reliable persona. Your no now needs heavier justification, more careful diplomacy. It might cost you a chunk of relational trust. The mental energy you spend, it dwarfs the effort of just doing the task. You're not managing work. You're managing the broken expectation your past yeses created. This isn't a modern discovery. It's ancient power dynamics, automated. The strategist Han Feizi, talking about control over 2 millennia ago, nailed it. The minister has his toil, the ruler has his achievement. Achievement established is followed by reward, but toil perceived as limitless leads to responsibility without bounds. A modern systems language translation. The system will treat your consistent toil, your acquiescence, your effort, as a publicly available infinite resource. It will not set boundaries for you. Boundaries reduce its scheduling efficiency. The less you limit yourself, the more the system codifies boundarylessness as your default identity. Han Feizi said, a dragon with verse scale, its bottom line, gets ridden forever. A node that never refuses is seen by the system as a perfect resource. Zero management cost, and its eventual exit or fluctuation, that doesn't get sympathy. It gets read as a systemic anomaly that needs correcting. Let's look at a shadow from Silicon Valley. Lisa, product ops manager, famous for getting things done, super cooperative. During product launch chaos, she always took the gray area work. Data verification, client hand-holding, everything. 3 years in, she had a savior reputation, but her actual job description, a blur. Her reviews always exceeds expectations. Promotions, they kept passing her by. The feedback, you're indispensable in your current role. The turning point was after her child was born. Lisa tried to set boundaries. She politely declined some non-core overnight emergency duties. What she met wasn't understanding. It was the system's confusion and a subtle penalty. For the next big cross-department project, she wasn't on the core team. A senior exec said privately, Lisa hasn't seemed as committed lately. We may need to rely on others. Lisa's always yes earned her the title indispensable, but it quietly stripped her of the right to be ordinary, to have choices. She was trapped in a role she couldn't escape, built brick by brick from all her past yeses. But here's the twist. Her biggest trap wasn't just the job, it was something much deeper. So, back to that first question. If you picked B, you see it now. Every extra yes reinforces the system's positioning of you as an unlimited liability node. The short-term trust you gain, it's often bought with the long-term erosion of your boundaries and the slow shrinking of your options. The price of always saying yes is trading your personal flexibility, your autonomy, to become a fixed, high-load cog in the machine of systemic stability. This is where we start Module D, long-term structural consequences. We're beginning to see how the behaviors that seem reasonable, even beneficial right now, can, under the magnifying lens of time, build constraints that are almost impossible to reverse. But always saying yes often comes from a deeper place, a desire for recognition, for success, which leads to a sharper, more heartbreaking paradox. If compliance solidifies your path, what about spectacular success? Especially early, visible success. Does it open doors or build a more exquisite, invisible cage? That's where we're going next. Our next lecture in Module D dissects a brutal professional phenomenon, how early success shrinks your margin of error. We'll pull apart why the sooner you get labeled a success story, a star, the less room you're allowed for mistakes, for exploration, even for just being average. We'll see why an early peak can set a baseline you're forced to chase for the rest of your career. If you've ever felt held hostage by your own past wins, the next session is your explanation. Subscribe, hit the bell. We're continuing to decode how time itself is the system's most powerful tool for building traps.